Hello everyone, this is PlayedSaw watching. I'm Loki, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the Marauder 6-piece set bonus in the Reaper of Souls expansion for Diablo 3. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Marauder set is the Demon Hunter specific Torment only set, and the 6-piece set bonus reads that your Sentries cast your equipped Hatred Spenders. Pretty cool sounding set bonus. I was very intrigued when I first saw the set. And I did some looking around to see if I could find some videos that kind of showed the set in action and went through some of the ins and outs of how it worked with different abilities, different runes, different effects. And I couldn't really find a whole lot, so now that I filled out the set, I decided to make one. So one of my first questions when I saw the set was, how often does it actually cast the Hatred Spenders? And Blizzard just recently did a patch that supposedly increased the frequency that it casts your Hatred Spenders. I didn't have the set beforehand, so I can't really speak to that. But right now, it seems to correspond directly to how much the Hatred Spender costs. For example, right now, as you can see, I have Cluster Arrow as my only Hatred Spender, and the Sentry casts about 3 attacks and then a Hatred Spender, then the Cluster Arrow. Which makes sense, since it's 40, that it would cast every 4th attack. So there seems to be some reason to the rhyme there. And that frequency of cast goes up the cheaper the spender is to a point. For example, Multi-Shot and Impale, which cost 20, do seem to cast about every other shot. But for some reason, when you have Elemental Arrow or Chakram, the 10-cost Hatred Spenders, it seems to bug out the internal attack speed a little bit. I don't know if they completely replaced the basic attack of the Sentry, but as you can see, they cast a little bit slower than they normally would, and definitely a little bit slower than I cast it. I believe that that's a bug. Maybe it's working as intended. I don't know. Occasionally, it seems like they'll start casting at the proper speed, so I think it is a bug. But for the moment, the higher cost Hatred Spenders seem to be the better choice. My second question when I got this set was, do they do the same amount of damage that I do with my Hatred Spenders? The answer to that is pretty much yes. They do the same damage, but they seem to have more of an average, so the damage is less variable. As you can see, these are pretty consistently hitting for around 400,000 and critting for around 2 million. And if I were to cast it, let me get to a clear spot here so we can read the numbers a little bit easier. Mine seem to have a bit more of a variance. Like I'm getting as low as 1.8 and as high as like 2.4. Yeah, you can kind of see the numbers in there. I know it's hard to read, but there's some 2.3s and 2.4s and then as low as 1.6 crits. So they seem to do the same damage. It's just more of an average. I have a high damage range on this bow. This is a Crider shot. So it has, let's see here. Yeah, 1,000 to 2,000 damage per hit, so that's quite a range. And for some reason, the Sentries seem to take more of an average when they calculate their damage. I'm not 100% sure why that is. If anybody has some insight to that, please let me know. But anyway, moving on. My next question was, does it cast runes? And as you've already seen with the ones that I've been putting down, it does indeed. It's casting Ball Lightning on Elemental Arrow. And it will cast every rune of every Hatred Spender that it will cast, and we'll get into the Hatred Spenders that it will and will not cast a little bit later. The next question I had was after I saw another item, the bow that I am currently using, because I'm a lucky bastard, called Crider Shot. Crider Shot makes your Elemental Arrow generate hatred as opposed to costing it, but for the purposes of this set bonus, it does not take that into account. It still counts Elemental Arrow as a Hatred Spender and will cast it as though it was a Hatred Spender. As I talked about before, this can be a problem because the 10-cost Hatred Spenders, which Elemental Arrow is one of, seem to be a little bit bugged out right now and casting a little bit slower than they should. But it also allows you to get 2 Hatred Spenders for the cost of 1, which isn't a bad thing. And also having Elemental Arrow as your hatred generator really increases your personal damage as well. A lot of people have said because of the bugged attack speed that Crider Shot isn't even worth using and that it's better to go with multi-shot and cluster arrow. I think that's a little bit debatable. The every sentry that you put out will cast 2 elemental arrows before it casts a cluster arrow, and the only difference if you have multi-shot is that it will cast 2 multi-shots and 2 of its regular auto attacks before it casts your cluster arrow. It doesn't slow your cluster arrows down at all, and like I said, it really increases your personal damage to have that elemental arrow as your hatred generator. So I think that's debatable, but we'll see how that plays out. If they do fix it, if it is broken, to make these cast elemental arrow in place of their basic auto attack as fast as their normal auto attack, then that will by far be the best combo in the game. You will just crank out so much damage with all of these sentries out. It'll be absolutely ridiculous. Now, I've talked a lot about how awesome this set is, with really the only downside being the somewhat seemingly bugged internal attack speed. But let's talk about some other downsides. It will not cast channeled hatred spenders, so strafe and rapid fire, and it also will not cast your hatred spender that gets cast on the ground. This is the only one we have, Spike Trap, but I don't think that's too horrible of a downside. Spike Trap would be kind of cool, but I don't find myself missing strafe or rapid fire really at all. Between all the other ones and all of the runes for all of the other ones, you have a lot of combinations and interesting things you can do that can put out some serious damage, so I don't find myself missing those too much. The other downside is that, as per normal, pets do not gain the benefit of area damage, and this does not change with this set. Even though they're casting your abilities, they are still considered pets, so they will not proc any area damage that you have, which makes that a little bit of a weaker stat for Demon Hunters, since this is kind of our premier Torment 6 set. But again, not too big of a deal. Maybe that's something they'll change in the future, and if they do, we'll become gods, and that will be awesome. But for the meantime, it's good enough as is. Now, moving on, very briefly, I'm going to touch on some of the cool combos you can do with this. Since I already kind of showed you the elemental arrow, cluster arrow version, you can use any rune combination of either of those that you want, depending on what kind of elemental damage types that you have. And this is definitely a fun one and can be really good, especially for your personal damage, because as I said, the internal attack speed is a problem, but you do a whole lot of damage yourself with the elemental arrow and the cluster arrow, and you still have a hatred generator without having to, and you can free up another slot without having to have a generator, cluster arrow, and some other kind of hatred spender to really make this set shine. One of the go-tos besides this elemental arrow cluster arrow combo is cluster arrow with either shooting stars or loaded for bear, either a physical or fire damage build, with multi-shot with either full broadside or arsenal. Again, depending on what kind of elemental damage build you have. And you'll need a hatred generator for this build as well, most likely, if you want to do any sort of real damage, but this is definitely a really solid build. It gives you, like I mentioned before, 2 multi-shots and 2 sentry auto attacks between cluster arrows, and this can really put out a lot of damage. Multi-shot does 360 weapon damage, and with arsenal it fires 160 weapon damage rockets, and with the physical one it increases the damage to 460%, I believe. Double check that. Yes, 460%. And cluster arrow just does a shitload of damage no matter what rune you have for it. It's a great ability. This is kind of the go-to build, especially if you do not have a Crider shot, and even if you do have a Crider shot, this one can compete with it depending on situations, your other stats, your elemental modifiers, things like that. So there's some quick final notes before I leave you here. This is a really solid set, easily one of the best class-specific sets in the game. I only really talked about the Sentries, but obviously the 4-piece set bonus that gives you all of the companions is fantastic as well. I was able to jump from having trouble farming Torment 4 to pretty easily being able to farm Torment 6 with virtually no deaths. And I did that while losing about 300,000 damage because the pieces didn't roll as well as they could. So it is a very, very solid set, well worth taking the time and resources to really invest in getting. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comments, and let me know if you want to see more videos like this in the comments. And if you have any questions about the Marauder set that I didn't cover, or any questions about the Demon Hunter in general, leave those in the comments as well, and I will do my best to answer them. Alright, I'll catch you all in the next one. Have fun.